Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me today. I'm here to talk to you about the power of generative AI and how it is revolutionizing data analysis. But first, let me tell you a bit about myself. I'm an Azure Cloud Data Practice Leader and a consultant. I lead a team of Azure data architects and engineers who design, develop, implement enterprise level data solutions that enable clients to derive maximum value from their data. I have always been passionate about data and technology. Ever since I was a kid, I loved playing with computers and gadgets, but I also loved solving problems and finding patterns. I wanted to combine both worlds in a way that would make sense and make an impact. And recently, I discovered generative AI. Generative AI is a branch of artificial intelligence that focuses on creating new content or data from existing data. It can generate images, text, music, videos, and more. It can also analyze and transform data in many novel ways. Generative AI is not only a powerful tool for data analysis, but also a creative medium for innovation and discovery. It can help you uncover new insights, opportunities, and solutions from your data. It can also help us communicate our findings and stories in a more engaging and accessible way. Now, let me show you some examples of how generative AI can revolutionize data analysis. So, the first point is all about synthetic data and synthetic data generation. Now, synthetic data is a data that is artificially created by an algorithm to mimic real data. It can be used to augment existing data sets, especially when the real data is scarce, expensive, or sensitive. For instance, imagine you're working on a project that requires customer segmentation. We have a small set of real customer data, but you need more to train your model. How can you get more customer data without violating privacy or ethical issues? Now, one solution is to use generative AI to create synthetic customer data that look realistic and diverse. Generative AI can learn from real customer data and generate new ones that have different features, preferences, behaviors, etc. This way, you can increase the size and variety of dataset without compromising the quality or privacy. You can also use synthetic data to test your model's performance and robustness under different scenarios. Now, here is an example that I wanted to show you. Using synthetic data generation powered by generative AI model called Tabgan, Tabgan. So, over to the next screen now. All right, so how I started is that I found some sample data on Kaggle. All right, so was basically a diabetes data sets for pregnant women. Now, not to talk much about the data, but in all real sense, it was columnar. It was relational rather, in the form of columns and rows. And there are certain attributes which actually need to be uh, kept in perspective while generating or augmenting this data set further. Now, for the sake of your understanding, I have given some sample rows here. So I basically went to Bing. I understand Bing Chat is using GPT-4 under the hood. So I tried to ask Bing Chat to generate some sample data using Tapcam. Now, I also tried asking without Tapcam, and that's when it gave me just sample random numbers without uh, you know, uh, any consideration to the attributes or the distribution between them, or you know all the relationships between them. Now, this is just a screenshot that I'm sharing. So that I tried, and as an output of that prompt, it did give me and generated this data set for me, right? uh, Now, I was a bit skeptical whether it actually kept all things in perspective, though it says that it used Tabcan to generate this data. But I still went ahead and asked as to how this data was generated. So it explained to me that it used Tabgan and give me the details of it as well. Now, I was still not convinced, and I basically asked to show me the code for Tabgan. So it gave me the code as well, right? However, I have, you can say, I wanted to take it further, and that's when I asked if it can show me the code that it used to generate the data. And it said that it used the same code in the previous message, and I was not basically still in, in agreement with this. And that's when I asked it to explain the code to me line by line. Okay. And not to scare, but again, it's amazingly scary. Okay. It did explain it to me line by line. And that's when I didn't wanted to take it further, because it provided me all the evidences that it used Tapcam to generate this synthetic data set. So with this example, I was able to showcase that you can use data generated by the generative AI model called Tapcam for your synthetic data needs. As you can see, this data look very realistic and diverse. They are indistinguishable from the real customer data. And that's what, I just want to share that with you. That is something that I have discovered recently, how to apply it to synthetic data generation. And here it is for you. Now, coming to the second point is all about interactive and dynamic visualization generation. Interactive and dynamic visualizations are visualizations that respond to user input and feedback. They allow users to explore, manipulate, and customize the data in real time. For instance, imagine that you are working on a project that requires sentiment analysis. You have a large set of text data that contains opinions and reviews from customers. And certainly, not all the users will be good, so there will be critics as well. So how can you visualize this data in a way that is informative and engaging? Now, one solution is to use generative AI to create interactive and dynamic word clouds that adapt to user input and feedback. Generative AI can learn from the text data and generate more clouds that show the most frequent and relevant words in the data. Generative AI can also generate word clouds that show different aspects of data, such as positive, negative, or natural sentiment. This way, you can provide users with a rich and personalized experience of your data. You can also use interactive and dynamic word clouds to tell stories and narratives that highlight important trends and insights. Now, I do have an example for that as well, wherein an interactive and dynamic word cloud generated by generative AI, uh, you know, can be seen. So let's go to the next screen. So as you can see, this word cloud shows the most frequent and relevant words in the text data, but it's not just any data. Okay, it is basically derived from a survey which was conducted, and based on the free text that the users entered, it is able to distinguish and segregate between emotional words, imaginary words, and several other segments for you to give a better understanding of your survey. All right. Now, for any word cloud that you may have come across, it's basically a collection of words together with the most number of occurrences, right? But this takes a little further. It basically gives segments to those words which help you understand the responses better. Now, I also talked about some engaging way of dealing with the survey data, right? So I have one more thing to show you. I came across this demo on one of the polling or the survey providers, how they have basically tried to innovate on the back of generative AI. So just to give you a background, this survey was conducted, by the server provider, the infrastructure provider, and they basically asked users to rate between two brand names. Okay, so the first brand name was called Brand A. In the backend, or the actual name was Custom GPT.ai. whereas the brand B was called Ask Waldo, right? Um, if you have a closer look, this interface has various things. It has responses, the word clouds, the demographics, insights, and there is a thing called Ask Me Anything. This is where you speak with the natural language, in natural language, to interact with the survey data, and that's what I did. So I simply asked what are the name of the two brands, and it gave me the output, right? If you look at the right hand side, it also shows the distribution of the responses as well. Now, this is what I truly feel is going to revolutionize how you deal and how you analyze your data. This is just the survey data, but it can be anything that you collect in your work area or maybe any service with your customers. I find it very interesting. I'm taking it to the next screen wherein I asked the assistant as to what makes brand B a clear winner. If you have a closer look, 78 out of 100 respondents chose brand B, that was Ask Waldo, as the better name against customgpt.ai, right? An assistant understands the nuances of the responses and gives a very rich and engaging output that brand B stands out and has more personality than brand A. No doubt about that, right? Now, this is definitely an onset of how we're going to see data analysis and how the results will be shared going further. uh, but yeah, this is something that I truly wanted to share with you, and I hope it give you that some idea, some spark at the back of your mind as to how you should be leveraging something like this, probably in your next stint, gig, engagement, whatever you want to talk about, right? Now, coming to the third point, this is where it gets more novel. Now, the third point is all about novel and optimal solution generation. Now, novel and optimal solutions are solutions that are new and better than existing solutions. They optimize data performance and efficiency by finding the best possible combinations of parameters, features, and actions. For instance, imagine that you're working on a project that requires product recommendation. It's a very narrow use case. You have a large set of product data that contains information about products, prices, ratings, reviews. How can you recommend the best practices to your customers based on their preferences and needs? It's not a new problem to solve, but we have a new solution at it. The new solution is to use generative AI to create novel and optimal product recommendations that optimize customer satisfaction and revenue. Generative AI can learn from the product data and generate product recommendations that match the customer's preferences and needs. Generative AI can also generate product recommendations that are novel and optimal, meaning that they are not obvious or common, but they are better than existing recommendations. This way, you can provide customers with a unique and valuable service that enhances their loyalty and retention. You can also use optimal product recommendations to increase your sales and profits. Now, I do have an example for that, and not just a product example. Rather, I want to share a research conducted by a group of researchers, and it was a long post. That's why I basically have a recording of it. So I'm simply running it right now. But I will talk about. So in this research, they basically try to compare a vanilla recommendation engine that they build using an arrow implementation using ML models, and try to compare the outputs with the outputs generated by generative AI. So they basically give the input in the series of prompts to the generative AI model, and based on the data that it saw, it suggested recommendations on top of that, right? Now, what you see here is that they tried providing recommendations on the movie data set, wherein they were provided a series of a set of information as to what all movies has the user seen, and based on that, uh, and also the information that the movies that they have not seen, and based on that, it was able to tell that okay, what you should watch next. And though again, it's again, I would say I was taken a bit surprised because so far we have been used to creating those narrow use case, those specific models to generate recommendations. But then this time, generative AI gave better or rather outperformed the traditional recommendation systems, right? This is just one example of the recommendation engine. I won't be surprised if we get to apply many, in many ways, the generative AI to these narrow use cases that we used to solve earlier. Now, what makes generative AI valid for such a use case? Now, for a recommendation engine, you actually don't need an accurate output. You just need to have an output which is largely there. Okay, you don't need the exact recommendation that has the 100% chance to be clicked. Rather, probably a 80-85% is good enough, right? So what you saw was just an example of a optimal product recommendation generated by generative AI model called GPT-3. We are all observing the magic of GPT-4, and I won't be surprised if it gathers more capabilities in the future. So these product recommendations are tailored for customers' preference and needs, and that they are not typical or expected. They are better than existing recommendations, right? So these were the three things I wanted to share with you today. To conclude, I hope I have been able to show you the generative AI and how it can revolutionize data analysis. So, to summarize, generative AI can create realistic and diverse synthetic data to augment your existing data sets. It can generate interactive and dynamic visualizations and adapt to user inputs. And third, it can also give you the recommendations which are better than that you used to get with your narrow built ML models. So with that, I would like to conclude today's talk. So without further ado, I would request you to subscribe, share, like this content if it truly helped you, and this way you will be you know uh, notified for any new content that I share in future. And believe me, there is more to come, and not just on generative AI, but also on the upcoming MS build. So tune in. Thank you. I'll see you next time.